Love that music. Welcome to Activate Worcester. I'm Ron Mata. This is, I guess, our 6th show and probably one of the last we'll be having during the month of September, or at least during the summertime. That's why I've got my little summertime shirt on. And if you can get a good shot of this.
Not supposed to wear white after Labor Day.
Not supposed to wear white after Labor Day. You know what our logo is. It's myself, it's Chris, and it's Sandy. And we actually have these very, very highly desirable T-shirts that are going to be available at $19.95 a pop.
Yeah.
So just
no, that's a joke. You can't sell anything on this TV.
We can't sell. I'm just being facetious about it. But at any rate, welcome. Glad to have you on again. And as you know, Activate Worcester is a show that we do pretty much on a weekly basis. And it's built around the guests. And the guests are here singular every time. We try to have guests that have something to contribute, something to make you think, and something to help you move forward, to activate Worcester to become a better city than it is. It's pretty good, but we think we make it better. And tonight we have a really, really fun guest who I'll have Chris on in 10 seconds, and he'll explain who our #1 guy is for the night. Mr. Pinto, how are you tonight?
I'm well. How are you?
I like the jacket.
Thank you, sir.
It's a whole new you.
It's to hide my big belly.
Yes, it looks hot.
You on
It's
your
very
diet.
hot. It does look hot.
It is a little warm in here, as it usually should be. We talk about some hot topics. So tonight, I feel our guests, get introductions, but this gentleman here, he deserves a nice long introduction. He's very active in the community. He might pop up at Republican meetings. He might pop up at Tea Party meetings. He's been known to pop up at secure community protests when the governor was running his dog and pony show about secure communities. And these group of people that wanted to go there and say you need to implement secure communities, they basically shut down the governor's dog and pony show. One thing you have to know about this gentleman is don't mistake him as being angry. He's one of the most passionate speakers I've ever run into when I go to different community meetings. He's passionate, he gets fired up, he's very well versed in the issues, and tonight he's going to help us out a lot. He's going to explain his experience with town meetings. He might even tell us a little funny story about a Westboro town meeting tonight if we're lucky. And he once wrote an As I See It piece. What was it on, Len?
Well, that was after the selectmen in Westboro, where our taxes are now pushing 70% higher than the state average, refused to let the taxpayers vote up or down on an underride to Proposition 2.5. I guess they think 70% is not enough. Maybe we need 100% more than the state average.
Yep.
I don't know what their reasons were.
And
yeah.
I think the success of an As I See It piece in the Telegram and Gazette is usually the number of comments it gets. And I remember Len's piece was up there in the 130s, 140s. So he
did
wrote
all the
a
record
fairly
for a while.
Controversial piece that got people fired up about the issue. And hopefully tonight he'll get us fired up as he explains to us his experience with town meeting.
Town meetings.
Now, before you start, the man's name is Len Mead.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I not
say
his name?
He's not just Len, he's got a last name.
We all know him as Len because he's like a family member, so I apologize, Len.
These guys are a family, so look, just remember, it's a family. And I'm from Westboro, and it's a pleasure to take part in a program that celebrates Worcester and getting active in Worcester. Where's the camera, by the way? If I'm looking
look at
the
me.
camera,
Just
where the
look
heck
at
is
us.
it?
Just look at me.
All right,
You're better
fine.
off.
Stay
See,
natural.
I'm not used to this. But I live in Westboro, and for example, my wife had gotten an infection about 4 weeks ago after a hip operation. Went into UMass Memorial. They saved their life. I'm in a great hospital, and I'm very happy to hopefully contribute to this program and to people who may want to get active in their community and active in their town meeting. And I have some experience in that in Westboro. And for some reason, I'd like to get involved and look at what the financial trends are in a town, because usually the taxes are high, maybe too high. And when you go into town meeting and you think you want to take an active role, I guess the most constructive thing that I could suggest for anyone is to realize really what is happening, what happens at a town meeting. Now, maybe all of you have seen, this is kind of a picture, it's out in the museum in either Sturbridge, Pittsburgh,
Norman Rockwell. Norman Rockwell.
And Norman Rockwell, where, here's a citizen in town meeting. This is one of the 4 freedoms that Rockwell painted. And here's a man, freedom of speech. And thank God we still have that. I think we still have that in the United States. Let's not get into Obama, but we can say what we want, and they're not going to come arrest us today. And here's a guy speaking to his neighbors and speaking to citizens at town meeting, about and something important to him. And something.
Taxes, maybe.
It could be taxes. Now, when you're doing that, when you're at town meeting, you get a list of things to vote on. And the list of things usually consists of 20 or 30 items, more bullets for the police chief's guns, putting a sewer line in somewhere, more tires for the fire department, et cetera. Things that everybody tires and bullets, and we know what those are. So I have an opinion on, I'm going to get up and tell you my opinion about police bullets. Well, you can do that all you want, but the real money and the real cost of running our towns is labor, union labor. And the unions are primarily the teachers. And of course, we all love teachers. We hate the thugs and the teachers union. And the teachers hate them too. They're all trapped, just like every other union member. But they can unionize since Kennedy, and they have. They're state workers that are unionized. And the cost to pay them is usually over half the town budget. So when that item comes up in your town budget, that's the one that's the killer. And the way the contracts are always written, in case you think you're going to make a difference in your town by cutting the fire department back on how many tires or hoses or some other thing. I don't mean to belittle this at all. But what I am saying is the real dollars are the union dollars that the unions, the professional thugs, have arranged in their contracts, which have been going on for years and years and years. And typically these contracts mandate an automatic pay increase and automatic step raises, for example. If you're teaching the 6th grade and you go out and you take a bunch of courses and now you have a higher degree, automatically, according to the union, you get a pay raise. Now, I wonder who has to pay that. Well, of course, that's built into the union contract and on and on. So these contracts are where the real costs are. And they are negotiated months and months before the town meeting. And unfortunately, they have to be negotiated in a fair amount of secrecy because in order for the town and the union to come to an agreement, they have to do it in so-called good faith. What good faith means is that they decide what they need, and then they come over to you, and they open your pocket.
Are you going for my wallet?
And they take the money right from there. See how this works? You're not in the room. You're not in the room. So now we go to town meeting. And item 24 out of 33 is, by the way, how about 35 million more bucks for the schools? Well, if somebody, you're sitting at town meeting. Here's your 6th grade teacher sitting right next to you. You're going to stand up. Hey, wait a minute. These guys are getting too much pension. You're going to do that? Well, maybe you should. And that's what, of course, I did because I knew the facts and I knew that they were much, much too much expensive. But what you have to base your judgment and your discussion on at town meeting is what they're going to hand you. And what they'll hand you is a booklet with some information about these spending articles, which, makes perfect sense. And in Westboro, for example, when I got there 10 years ago, they just said, here's last year and here's what we want this year. And you look at these two things, and you go, oh, this is up. Well, maybe it's up too much. This one is down. Well, is it? Well, maybe the one that's down should have been cut entirely. Maybe the one that's up shouldn't go up at all. I mean, where's your basis to judge? So if you want to start getting active in your town, you may have to decide, I'm interested in the schools, or I'm interested in the civil engineering of the town. I mean, everybody has their own skills. And the town can use those skills, and I mean, you have an opinion that really is worth listening to. But in order to make it meaningful, you may have to decide, look, go in ahead of time and find out, well, like, what are the trends? For example, the big items: pay, benefits, health care, retirement, for your unions. Are we paying the police 1.5 times more what the average is getting, across the state? You may want to know that before you go into town meeting, because it may not matter whether you cut the fire department back a couple of tires. In fact, it doesn't matter at all if the police pay raise swallows that up and more. Now, the last bit of just common sense, but yet it may not be apparent when you walk into town meeting, because they're your friends, there's your neighbors. Many times town meeting is, you could be out mowing your lawn, taking your kids to the beach, whatever else, and you say, okay, I'm going to be active. I'll go to the Worcester town meeting. I'll take part. I'll discuss things, and issues will come up, and I'll stand up and I'll say what I think what's meaningful. Well, those are good intentions, and indeed, more people need to do that. But to have meaningful results, you have to know something about what regulates the growth of the spending in all your towns. And what regulates it, of course, is Proposition 2.5, which is so misunderstood. But I'll try to go real quick here. Over 30 years ago, in 1980, our taxes were exploding. The caucus miracle, and he's running for president, and meanwhile literally bankrupting the state and spending money he didn't have. Blah 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 blah, and we had one of the highest real estate taxes in the country. Now we are the 6th highest taxed state in the country. But with more effort, we'd be number one.
We'd be number one.
We could do it. And with the governor we got now, the empty suit that we have, we'd probably be able to do that. But at that time, the citizens were so outraged by that Citizens for Limited Taxation was formed. And that phrase, citizens for limited taxation, we need taxes. We need fire departments. We need to have the streets paid. Of course we have to pay taxes. It's a question of how much, and how much should they go up every year. Well, Citizens for Limited Taxation came up with a plan and said, look, we want to pay taxes, but we just don't want them going up 10 and 15 and 20% every single year, primarily to pay union people, because their union thugs have extorted this from the lactating school board who loves kids and knows nothing about education, but they want to help. The police union, who certainly want to fight them. I might get held up and they wouldn't help me. Or, gee, the fire department. Heck, I don't want my house to burn down. If I trouble with them, the call comes, hey, we know where this guy lives. Let's take a little more time to get there. And, people, there's these reasonable thoughts, So the point here is that all those pressures taxes were exploding with no limitation at that time. None. And so the citizens put on the ballot by initiative petition the formation of Proposition 2.5, and basically said, okay, let's evaluate all the value of everything in every town, the houses, the businesses, everything else, and we'll come up with, try not to go to sleep here, a levy limit. Doesn't that thrill you? Well, what the levy limit is, 30 years ago, was all the value of everything as a benchmark. Okay, we're going to start here, and we're going to say, okay, here's the value of, let's say, Westboro or Worcester or whatever town we're talking about. And next year, taxes can only go up by 2.5% more than what that value was in 1980. That's the starting point. Plus, a couple of things, plus new growth. So, for example, if Worcester, if you put this airport in, maybe you put up a hotel, put up a casino, whatever, make it more of a dynamic city, which it deserves to be. It's the hub of the state. It's got all kinds of potential. And so all that new construction would add to that levy limit. And so then from a little higher amount, it can go up 2.5% more. If nothing happens the next year, it can go up 2.5% more of what it was the year before. Well, you remember from your third grade math, compounding? You know, after 6 years, after 10 years, even at 2.5%, doubles, 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 doubles. Well, here we are.
Sounds like a loan shark collecting a debt.
Well, even better, though, because the way Prop 2.5 was written, unfortunately, it didn't make very many provisions for what happens if a lot of those businesses that were set at that first level, let's say a lot of those businesses leave. And, for example, that's what happened in Westboro. There's my, when we set our levy limit in 1980, we had IBM, Control Data, Data General,
GTE.
Digital Equipment.
See ya.
Thank you. Right.
All the DOD contractors.
I remember sitting in, I was a salesman back then. I remember sitting in meetings with Digital Equipment, and they were, our biggest problem, we got to hire 6,000 people this year, we don't know how to get them. 6,000 people a year they had to hire. And they were sweating because our competition's eating us up. We got to find these people. Well, now they were included in our tax base, and lucky us. Wow, we had a huge high levy limit. Well, here we are today. They're all gone. No Data General, no Digital Equipment, no IBM location, no Control Data. The levy limit, however, stays right where it is. It doesn't drop, even though all those tax-paying businesses are gone. So as a result, and I hope I'm not putting too many of you guys to sleep out there, but the point is that 30 years later, and this is a problem for Worcester and a problem for every community, the businesses that were there 30 years ago, in fact, many might have left, moved. If they expanded, their new growth. They were added to the levy limit. But if all of a sudden they left, the levy limit just stays there. And so that means your community is able to raise taxes on businesses that aren't there, and the town gets this flow of tax money to come in, whether they need it or they don't need it.
And they're making that all
and
up.
Guess what? If they get the money, I wonder if they spend it. Where does it go? Let's see. Pay, benefits, health care. Never mind whether the economy is in the toilet like right now. Never mind where businesses have gone bankrupt like they have right now. And so these are the underlying forces behind the flow of money that always increases to every community, whether they need it or not. And the forces driving that up, which are all these union contracts, many times a half of the budget of Worcester, Westboro, Shrewsbury, any other community. So when you're up in town meeting with all good intentions, thinking, I want to participate, I want to show up, I want to have an impact, these are the forces that are out there, many times behind the scenes. And, I'm a salesman. See what I got every year? I got a pay cut. Like everybody. See, you're in the private sector. Guess what, Lenny? Last year you sold, $500,000. Next year, you're going to sell $520,000, and if you don't, we'll fire you.
Are you suggesting that if we lose businesses in the city, they should get less tax revenue because of that?
Well, if they're not there, no, that's an excellent point. Now, let me see. If the businesses leave, you mean they don't send the money back where they used to be?
Well, no. Businesses leave that used to pay $2 million in taxes.
Exactly.
Are you saying that the levy should drop down by $2 million?
Well, ideally, yes, in terms of fairness to the tax rolls that any community sends out. Because in theory, if a business is there, and let's say they have 500 employees, well, those 500 employees need police protection, fire protection. Maybe they live in the city or educating them. But if they're gone, the city may not have to provide all those services.
Yep.
So there's some reason that, yes, the levy limit should be reduced. However, Chris, thank you, an excellent point. How can the levy limit ever go down? One way. If citizens say, you know what, we want to vote and lower the levy limit. And that's what was needed in Westboro when I proposed that, and they decided, no, we like you guys. We like you paying close to 70% higher than the state average, and maybe that's not enough. So, Lenny, why don't you get out of the selectmen's meeting and leave us alone because we're not. See, they always know the problem is they don't have enough money. They never have enough.
In 2002, CLT honored you, and they named you Citizen of the Year.
Well, I was running a taxpayer organization in Newton that, among other things, was fighting an override at that time, which unfortunately we lost. It was the largest override in the history of the state, $11 million just for raises for...
Explain override.
Thank you. You've got a levy limit wherever it is. It started here, now it's up 30 years later, now it's up here. Well, the problem is, you guys are good, excellent. The problem always is it's not enough. We need more money. Well, in Newton, I'm sorry. See, in Newton, among other things, they needed a new high school.
Oh, the Taj Mahal.
They had two high schools,
$200 million.
And Newton North. They're only 30 years old. But what happens, and I'm sorry I'm backing into this a little too much here, but intentionally what communities do is they let their precious municipal buildings collapse because then they have enough money for the raises for their unions so they don't go on strike. This is intentional, and it is brutal, and it's despicable. They do it, and they know they do it, but they don't care. Because then, when the building collapses, the ceiling tiles start falling in the kids' heads, in the classroom, then they can apply to the state.
Have a new school.
To have a whole new school, whether they need it or not. Well, anyway, in Newton, that's what they did, and the bottom line is we ended up with the most expensive school.
$200 million? Is that what it was?
On the planet.
The Taj Mahal of high schools.
Planet, yeah, and it's a building. It starts here, and then it has a circle, and then it wanders this way, and then it, if you ever see it, and not too much works either, it's, it's.
But it looks good. It looks
so
good.
But moving right back though, if in Newton, we don't have enough money to put up a 200. They only had 1,500 little snots going to these schools,
No.
There we go.
These little rich coddle 1,500 kids for $200 million? Give me a break. Give me a break.
Okay. I agree.
Give me a break.
What's that cost per student?
Don't you got a wastebasket here? I mean, this is the kind of outrageous arrogance that these communities have. We know we need a new school. We know it.
So they got
We've got a 30-year-old building. It's not enough. We've let it collapse. We haven't fixed the furnace in 20 years. And guess what? The furnace isn't working. Well, whose fault is that? The people that pay for it? Are we?
Yes.
We should be going in there fixing their furnace?
Absolutely.
Well, anyway, this is a little... Sorry, folks.
But Len, listen.
Len,
we love you.
Just to kind of put it in perspective, I was chuckling or chortling, whatever the word is, to myself when you were talking about school budgets being about 50% of the total budget of a town.
That's typical, yes.
Typical, right.
Typical.
I'll settle for
right.
it because in this city, our number is actually way beyond 60% and close to 65%.
Okay.
And there's a punchline. They don't have enough. They need more. They need more. So it's insatiable. The more you give, the more they demand.
So maybe we could be fair to Worcester because you brought some charts that show that Worcester tax rates aren't nearly as bad as some of the other towns. It's on the other side there.
Thank you.
Underneath your line graph.
We have about 4 minutes.
I'm sorry?
We have about 4 minutes, and I
4
want to
minutes.
make sure you...
Okay, well, I tell you, if you're not asleep yet, you're going to be after this. Anyway, this is a quick picture. My God, I got to make this
nice.
No, you're fine.
Look at that.
Focus that.
This is a quick
boy.
picture
nice.
of the taxes, the average tax paid in some of the communities around Worcester. Here's Worcester. The average home tax is about $3,300. And I'm sorry, that's last year. They always, their fiscal year always runs the previous year. You can get this data from Worcester. You can get it from the Mass Municipal spreadsheets in the state website. There's any number of ways to get
We've improved on that number, by the way. It's a lot higher now.
Okay. The point here, though, is that in the way I think is the fairest to measure your real estate taxes is what percent of the value of your house do you have to pay to live in it? In Worcester, you pay about 0.7% of the value of your house. In other words, if you have a $100,000 house, you're going to pay about $7,000 for your taxes. Now, in Westboro, Worcester is below the state average. The state average real estate tax paid is about $4,491, and that was 2 years ago. That's the average. You take a dart, throw it at the map of Massachusetts, and on average, $4,400 or so is what the average person pays to stay in their house. Here we go down into Westboro, and the reason I tried to get an underride on the ballot is our taxes. We're paying 2 years ago $7,446 just to wake up in Westboro. We're now over $8,000. Then it was about 64% higher than the average in the state. Now, Westboro's an above-average town, but, you know, what are we talking about? Southborough is now 75% higher than the state average. And the point is that, the taxes are set by the continuing increase, 2.5% more. And if they need more money, and back to your question, I didn't answer it. What happens if you want to put up a $200 million high school? You need what's called an override. In other words, that levy limit isn't high enough now, so you vote as citizens, and you allow the city to tax you even higher.
And how high are they allowed to go if they achieve an override? Is the sky the limit?
Actually, Chris, yes, it is. And the town would propose to you the cost over X number of years that they think they would need that extra money to put up a new school. It does go for a fixed period of time, after which the levy limit goes down. It's called a tax override for that particular purpose. It's a little technical, but a general override lasts forever. That's what Newton did.
We have to wrap it up. What can the folks watching out there, what can they do regarding the whole issue of town meetings and so forth? If you could just one or two quick points, what should they be doing?
Look, people ought to be more active in their towns, but it takes just a little effort. You really have to go in and try to get the trends, the facts and the trends. You know, all right, everything's always going up, but is it going up by too much? And what's going up? Is it pay? Is it benefits? What is it? Get those statistics and don't ask for them just for 1 year. Say, well, all right, let's go back 5 years and what do they look like? Because then when you go to town meeting, you say, gee, for example, inflation has only been up 2% in 5 years. You want a 20% increase. That's way out of line.
All right, we're going to have you back as soon as we can wake everybody back up. Thank you, sir.
Basically, what Len is really saying is two things. Get involved and also do your homework. Research it. Don't go to these meetings and just blurt out. Have statistics to back you up and make your case. Len,
thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
That was fun.
Guys. Thank you.